Renee. I'm a mindset coach, life on life's terms coach. So, we're going to talk about codependency this evening. We talked about part one on Monday night. We talked about part two on Wednesday. And today we're going to talk about part three. It's going to be called Reclaiming Autonomy, Learning to See Yourself Clearly. Because this is a thing in codependency. We've talked about what it is and what it isn't, and how we tend to want to see ourselves through other people's eyes, maybe, is what we tend to do in codependency. So, seeing ourselves through our own eyes, because we also tell ourselves lies. And so, it's about learning to change our dialogue. That not everything is about us, but what is about us? And learning to trust ourselves. Oh my gosh, my hair is just awful right now. It's just flat. I've been laying around. Hello. So, anyway, that's what we're going to be looking at tonight is reclaiming autonomy, learning to see yourself clearly. You know, a lot of people have seen themselves through other people's eyes or try to see themselves through other people's eyes. And so that's a lot of codependency. So we've talked about what it is and what it is not on Monday Night Live. If you need to catch up, if you want to know more about codependency than what we cover tonight, then feel free to reach out and look at one of those on Monday or Wednesday. Oh, goodness gracious. Adjusted the computer on Monday or Wednesday. Wednesday, yeah, it don't matter now, but yeah. So we're going to look at the codependency and reclaiming your autonomy because a lot of times people feel controlled in codependency. So we may feel like that somebody's trying to control us. And so when we feel controlled, we don't have our clear autonomy because we think people are making us do things or we're giving our power away and looking for other people to make our decisions for us rather than us feeling and trusting ourselves enough to make our own decisions. We put all of our trust, and sometimes it's mistrust in people. So once you start seeing codependency clearly, you might feel two things at the same time: relief and fear. And fear drives a lot of codependency without people realizing it. So, fear of people leaving, fear of abandonment. This drives codependency. We develop codependency. It could be through the family, it could be through church, it could be through, my glove. Greetings. How are you this evening? It's good to see you. Park Skyline, good day to you. Good day to you. Thank you so much, darling. I'm glad that y'all are here. So, we're talking about codependency a little bit more. So I know that some of us are not in relationships now, but that's the thing is what we get to know is just because somebody's interested doesn't mean that that we're supposed to just, be obligated. You're doing good, enjoying your day off. That's awesome. Robbie, it's good to see you. Good morning. Well, thank you. Thank you. So here we grow and learning more about codependency. Like I said in the first one, second one is a lot of people are confused about what codependency is. Oftentimes, we are the rescuers, we are the fixers, and we sometimes think that other we take too much responsibility, right? We'll think to see you means, oh, to take responsibility. So there's relief because things start to make sense when we understand what codependency really is. There's a relief that because we think something's wrong with us a lot of times. It's like, what's wrong with me? Got to take responsibility. Absolutely, my glove. Yes. So we take responsibility for our feelings because the thing is that and accountability. Absolutely. Because a lot of times in codependency, people are telling us what to do. When I started this evening, I was talking about control. And a lot of times we'll feel like people are trying to control us. Where are my cough drops? I have this sinus cough or something. And so, yeah. So relief is knowing that codependency is, hey, Katie Paul, codependency is a learned behavior. That's what it is. It's a learned behavior, and we can unlearn learned behaviors. And fear, because we're no longer operating the way that we always have, is the fear is that we have to make choices. When we've been afraid of abandonment, a lot of people tell me they don't want to set boundaries because they don't like telling somebody no because they're afraid they're going to feel rejected. but they're kind of putting, had your cough drop? Okay. So the thing is that when people are afraid of feeling rejected, they're already, the other people are going to feel rejected. Sometimes they're rejecting themselves by even going there, you know? So that fear of change, we don't have to, do things the same way, but we have to learn a different way because there's nothing wrong. I always say there's nothing wrong with us. No one's stupid. No one's lazy. You don't deserve to be rejected. And maybe when you felt rejected, when we're trying to keep other people from feeling rejected and we reject ourselves, it compounds even more because we're rejecting our true feelings sometimes because we second guess our feelings. So the truth about change is codependency isn't just a behavior. It's a way of relating ourself to the world, our self-image. What we don't want to look like we're mean. We don't want to look like, we're cuss words or whatever. So sometimes we don't align with ourselves. We haven't learned maybe, I talked about how you can come from a background to where people don't talk and don't communicate with each other. So we don't learn to communicate our wants and our needs. And we certainly can't feel worthy if we don't get our wants and needs met. We may have a lack of self esteem and think that there's something wrong with us. And maybe we just didn't learn to communicate it, as with a lot of the clients that I work with, is that learning to communicate. So that being able to be vulnerable, a lot of people build a shield up around themselves when they've been hurt so much. And sometimes, they're looking for that one person. And so they match energy, but it's meant for their higher healing. It's meant to learn boundaries. Some of my catalysts have taught me the need for boundaries and how to set them. So codependency isn't just behavior, it's a way of relating yourself to the world. That's how you communicate to the world. I work with a lot of people. Any of you do this? Say, I'm sorry at every little thing. You know, is it sometimes I'm sorry for living, actually, is what it seems like. Kevin Cepeda, hello. Okay, well, I hope that something I say helps you tonight, Robbie. So many people everywhere around the world got bad coughs and flu right now. Too many bugs in the air. I was really bad. Yes, yeah. Thanks, Robbie. I know so many people with allergies and everything else because spring is springing. So, yeah. When we begin to shift in the codependency, there's a freedom to it when we start learning just little steps. Because if you're in a codependent relationship now, or you've been in a codependent relationship, when you decide you're wanting to, get your autonomy, when people have been used to having your power, because we teach people how to treat us, is something that I've had to learn. And when we start wanting our power back, if we all of a sudden start demanding things, then people think we've lost our mind. So it's taking these little steps so that we feel comfortable taking these little steps. It can feel unfamiliar when you start to shift and change your behaviors from the codependent behaviors, when you start learning how to set boundaries, when you start learning how to say no, to what doesn't serve your soul, when you start learning what you want. It takes a long time to learn what you want. One of the signs of codependency is when people go on a date, sometimes. And I tell my girls that I work with, I'm like, take yourself on a date. Take yourself on a date. And the guys too. Most of the guys that I work with are attached. So, but it's like, take yourself out. Don't wait for somebody else, because a lot of times we put the key to our happiness in somebody else's pocket. That's what codependency does too, is depending on somebody else to make the decisions. Like, when we have groups and stuff, and somebody's like, where do you want to go eat? And they're like, I don't know. Nobody knows where they want to go eat, but we do know where we want to go eat. That's why I tell my girls to take yourself out on a date. So when a date asks you where you want to go eat, you know where you want to go eat, rather than already starting, because it sets a precedence in our relationships. And the thing is sometimes we're just so starved for love. I did not get a chance to check out Christopher Hitchens. It seems like I checked that out before and it turned out not to be something, but I'm writing it down again. I have been busy. So, um, what do you like about Christopher Hitchens' Expose? I'm curious. So, it can feel unfamiliar when you start learning how to set boundaries. And I was talking about boundaries with love because a lot of the reason we fear setting boundaries too is if we come from a dysfunctional home, and conflict and confrontation is one of the big things that a lot of the people that I work with are afraid of. And when you come from a home where things were volatile, conflict and confrontation is scary. Hello, Frozen. I'm good. How are you? You're too boring to keep yourself company to take yourself out. I highly I take myself out. I enjoy taking myself out. I don't have to wait for anybody. I don't have to. There's freedom in taking myself out. I get to get the check. I get to go for a walk if I want to go for a walk. I get to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So I like taking myself out. But yes, I do. I practice what I preach. I'll go take myself to get a treat. I buy myself flowers. If I want some flowers, I'll go get me some flowers. I'm not sitting around longing and waiting for anything in my life. Well, thank you. Hello, Frozen. I'm from Texas, but I'm sitting near beautiful Cancun, Mexico. So, what reclaiming your autonomy means is reclaiming your autonomy doesn't mean you stop caring or that you push people away or that you become distant or cold. There's harmony in between empathy and apathy. There's harmony in between vulnerability and protection. So the ego and the soul, and that's what I work, with people. And if you were to do my self trust reset program, that's a 3-month program where I teach people how to trust themselves because we tend to go to extremes. We'll be really nice, and especially in codependency, we'll be nice, we'll be nice, we'll be nice, but things will start bothering us. We'll start feeling like somebody's. No, I was joking, Stacey. That okay. Thank you, Robbie. So we'll be nice, we'll be nice, we'll be nice in codependency. Then we're not feeling appreciated, right? So when we don't feel appreciated, then we start blowing up because we teach people how to treat us, and they naturally expect us to keep being nice all the time. And oftentimes we don't know how to express what we want. We think they should know, but they don't know. And that's what I had to learn in my codependency. You're from Russia? Is that right, Frozen? So in my codependency, I had to learn how to ask for what I wanted and I needed. And then if I got rejected on it, then to learn how to deal with that too. So, fear of rejection is a big thing in codependency. A lot of people tell me, I know what it feels like to be rejected and I don't want to. Awesome. Is it cold there right now, Frozen? So I don't want to be rejected. But the thing is you're rejecting yourself when you compromise yourself. So I teach people how to negotiate with it. Negotiate. We don't want to compromise ourselves, we want to negotiate. So what autonomy means is that you start including yourself in your own life. You start considering yourself. When somebody says, hey, do you want to go do this? If you don't know if you want to do it, you say, I don't know, let me think about it. That's the way I always suggest people to start learning the boundaries rather than just saying yes. And then the day of having some shame, feeling flaky because the day of you don't want to do it. Right. I get it because I used to do that kind of stuff too. Is I would maybe say yeah, so I didn't feel not included too. Right. Sometimes we don't want to feel like we're not included. And then the day of, we decide, I don't really want to do this. And then we feel bad because sometimes we make up stories why we don't want to do these things because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, right? Then we're taking responsibility for somebody else's feelings because people's feelings probably are not going to be hurt because you don't want to do something. Your feelings might be hurt because somebody else may not want to do something, but it doesn't mean their feelings are going to be hurt. So this is the thing about codependency is taking that responsibility, like Maglab was saying, for our own feelings and being accountable for our own feelings. I felt like I didn't want to hurt other people's feelings and sacrifice myself. Yes, people do that a lot. And I used to do it too. Before I learned what codependency was, I was told I was codependent. I was told, Stacy, quit being a doormat, because I would just say yes, because I do care about people. But just because I care about people doesn't mean I need to sacrifice myself. But I had my dad when I was growing up saying love means sacrifice. So I thought love meant sacrifice. And I thought that meant omitting myself and not even considering myself. So what I do is I teach people how to consider themselves and feel and consider somebody else, because when I say I want to do something, people know that I want to do it. When I tell people, if they ask me to do something, I say, yeah, let's do it. They're like, oh, they know that I want to. They're not like saying, oh, she's just saying that. She just, because I live, in with my own integrity now. If I want to do something, I say yes. If I don't want to do something, I say, no, thank you. No, you know. Because no thank you is good enough, and people will accept no thank you. It's our own unhealed wounds that make us feel bad if we have to say no thank you. It's not somebody else in most cases. We're taking responsibility for their feelings, if that is, and not considering our own. So, yeah, Frozen. It doesn't feel like May right now. It's cold. We're having a week of holidays and weekends. First comes the USSR holiday, Labor Day, May 9th. You got a lot of holidays, a lot of celebrating. All right. So, what reclaiming your autonomy does mean is that you start including yourself in your own life and your decision making so that you can learn to trust yourself. You begin to ask, what do I feel? Right? And sometimes that's why we do the breathing exercises at the end of these meetings, is because yeah, get to know, what am I feeling like. A lot of times we don't feel safe, and that's why we're saying yes, and we're just like, we have this high speed going on in our body, like, I got to do this now, I got to do this now, this urgency. And when we think about it, I mean, some of my clients I've been working with a while, and they still are toning down that sense of urgency, because that sense, we're aging with that sense of urgency. Y'all know that we will be aging with that sense of urgency, that hurry up and get somewhere, hurry up and do this, and then you don't even enjoy your time there because you're worried about traffic when you leave, or this and that. So we were taught to worry sometimes. It's not going to speed traffic up any. We were taught to do some of these things. So that's what I mean by we're retraining ourselves. So we start including ourselves in our own life. We ask, what do I feel? What do I need? And what do I want? And then we learn to express it, because a lot of us, when we don't feel worthy, we're afraid to express it. I know in my codependency, Rick Allen is the greatest drummer. That's Def Leppard, right? He's got one arm now because he had a car wreck, but he's still the greatest drummer. So I met him in Dallas, Texas one time when Def Leppard was in Texas, and they had a meet thing. So, um, when you ask yourself these questions rather than trying to figure out the right answer, in codependency, when someone asks us a question, we're oftentimes trying to anticipate and strategize what's the right answer. So we'll be accepted, because on the opposite end, we live in a polarity, electromagnetic universe with polarities. So if we're afraid of being rejected, what we want is to be accepted. But are we accepting ourselves? See, this is where we get to reclaim our autonomy, is when we learn to accept ourselves. So, um, I've got my notes here because I want to stay on task, but I also want to see your. Okay, Jeff, whatever. Whatever. So, are y'all listening though? So, starting with simple points. It isn't about changing everything overnight, right? I said that a while ago. It's, you got to change things one thing at a time. You can't just all of a sudden change your behavior and not think that someone's going to think you've gone mad. Russian hockey player, and you're giving me flowers. Thank you very much. Hello, Frozen. Well, thank you, Jeff Trotter. Narcan, are you in favor of acting in others' favor, or if it means you get a promotion, a relationship, or something? Narcan, I used to do that, but I like being authentic now, because what I learned is when I bent and twisted myself into a pretzel, I found out that whatever it was later ended because it didn't really match me, you know? I know with a job, sometimes people feel like they have to do that because you need a job to survive and to live. But in relationships, I don't believe in doing that because I want to be myself. And the thing is not everybody's going to like us. Not everybody has to like us, and that's okay because I'm pretty happy that some people don't like me. I'm happy when somebody doesn't want to talk to me. Some people, like when there's some people that will talk about, a bunch of monetary things about, oh, I've got this, I lent this person money, I did this, everything outside of themselves. Because when I talk to people, I like to get to know people. But when they're talking to me about other people, I really don't want to talk to them anyway. So if they don't like me, I'm quite okay with that. That's why Def Leppard needs the R&R Hoff. They didn't follow their dream. I know, right? Loyalty is called. Exactly. Exactly. Def Leppard's still cool. Robbie. By the time I finish learning from your wisdom, Stacy, I'm going to be a placed weapon and own the ground in the future. As we grow, you're the best buddy. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I hope that I'm able to do that for you and everybody, because if I can help one person on here, that makes my day. We individuals would be best advised to follow their example. Yes, loyalty. And it's being loyal to yourself too, because it didn't hurt them at all to be loyal to Rick Allen. They adjusted. Everybody adjusted. And that's what we're doing in our life oftentimes is some of the tapes that we received when we were younger, we adjusted and adapted to it, but it might not serve us today. Some of the beliefs. I believe it's common for men to sometimes be in a situation where he has to conquer the woman or she's sending mixed signals. I like that you said that, Narcan. And hi, Benny Eggs. So I like that you said that because I do believe in that we have to meet each other like this. A lot of these days, and for me in my past relationships, some of them I kind of pursued as much or more as them. And what I noticed when I looked at my own patterns in relationships, a lot of them were just coming out of relationships. So they weren't ready for a relationship. Maybe I hadn't been out of a relationship that long. Sometimes our ego has us trying to prove things. So is the conquering from the ego part, or is it, that they typically need to let the woman know that they're interested, or, not to expect the woman to chase them? They got jokes on the reels and stuff nowadays that the men play the princesses because women, I've been told I can be intimidating, but that's why I say that we have to know what we want in our lives. Like for me, I would have to have a confident man who's not insecure, because I don't know why someone would say I'm intimidating, but it's maybe because I speak my mind. I'm not afraid to speak. I'm not shy, anything like that. So I don't know why I'm intimidating, but I don't know if that answered that. But to conquer, depending on what it means by conquer, I think. No, we can't please everyone, and we don't even want to. If we really check with ourselves, then we don't feel like we have to have everyone like us if we check with ourselves because it's normal. It doesn't mean that other people are bad. Those people that I'm happy with that they don't talk to me, they're not bad people. We just don't have anything in common. That's right. There's a song that was it Mac Davis sang that song. If you can't please everyone, you got to please yourself. Da, 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 da. I forget. Anyway, but there is a song that says that. Yeah. So checking in with ourselves before we say yes. Jeff, I don't even think I know you with all this stuff you're talking. All right, Maglab. This being Friday, I'm enjoying my day off, imbibing on a few beverages, keeping steady though. Your wits. Good. You're not driving since you're keeping steady in your wits, right? Yes. All right. So, with these simple points that we can do, this isn't about changing everything overnight. It starts small. Notice when you're abandoning yourself. When you say yes, but you mean no. When you stay quiet, but you have something to say. I know I used to do that all the time. I'd be hanging out with people and I thought they were really cool, but I was afraid to say something. No, we did not, Jeff. In your dreams, darling. So, just notice, it without judgment. When when you have something to say. Oh my gosh, I'm not dealing with this. I don't even know who this person is. He's just no driving. When alcohol is involved, driving is off limits. That's right. Good. Good. All right. So notice when you're abandoning yourself, when you say yes, but you mean no, when you stay quiet, but you have something to say, and just notice it without judgment, not judging yourself. How many people go from a conversation and say, I should have said this, I should have said that, or I should have done this, or I should have done that. And that was the first thing I learned in therapy is not to should on myself. And not, how does judgment serve us? Next time you catch yourself judging, it's like, how is that serving me? You know, there's discernment. I like discernment. So the difference between judgment and discernment, I talked about this a few weeks ago. I did block him. I did. I'm not dealing with this tonight. He does not know me. I don't know him. He's dreaming. So I haven't drank in 28 years, almost 29. Ay. So just pausing before we react. That's number two. Instead of immediately fixing, helping, or adjusting, pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? Because a lot of times people will jump in and forget their own business to help somebody else. They'll be helping. They'll feel guilty if they don't help. You got to learn not to feel guilty for things that aren't your responsibility, you know? So, three is to practice honesty in safe ways. Notice, not forcefully, not all at once, but gently begin telling the truth where it feels possible. Thank you. So telling the truth, is saying, I don't know if I want to do that or not. And, I tell the truth all the time now. Most of the time, I rarely, I won't say something though. Don't get me wrong. Because as a coach, when I'm with my friends, I'm not coaching my friends. Greetings, North Korea, Nate Schrader. So I don't coach my friends. If they want to know something, if they ask me, then I will say something. But if they don't ask me, I don't tell them how to do their business. I don't suggest to them how to do their business unless they ask me. You know, I've worked hard on my codependency. You're from Kentucky. I know. Well, welcome, Nate from Kentucky. So, we're talking about codependency this evening, but don't worry if you miss some because I go back and I always recap some things. So I have some other things to add to this codependency to tie it all together this evening. Have you ever heard of codependency, Nate? A lot of people hear of it and we're like, I know the first times I used to hear of it, I'd be like, whatever, and blow that off. Just, hello, Stephen Haircut. So practice honesty in safe ways, not forcefully and not all at once, but by gently telling the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Stop and think, do I want to do this? Hello, Mohammed from Algeria. You used to be codependent for sure. I know, me too. Me too. I've worked on it a lot, and I work with people now today, still with codependency. A lot of people do the codependency, things today. And so for 22 years, I've worked on codependency. So I used that book when I was in the program of codependency. But now I just work with people to help people understand what it is. Because, Nate, did you find that after you got to work on codependency, that there's so much freedom on the other side of codependency when we let go of the codependency and learn, new behaviors rather and unlearn the old, get rid of the old behaviors and learn new behaviors. There's a lot of freedom to that. You'll hire me? Okay. Do you do something like that? The truth is, there's only one thing that will set you free. The truth will set you free. That's right. Oh, Gromit, I don't know if the goddess opened her heart to submit to the king. I don't believe in that submit stuff. I don't know. Four, stop over explaining. You don't have to justify your feelings, y'all. And to make them valid, a lot of times in a codependent, yeah, in a codependent relationship, even when I was codependent, I used to wear people out. They would ask me to do something, and the thing was, well, thank you very much, Nate. I appreciate that. So when people couldn't get a straight answer out of me because they'd say, Stacy, what about doing this or doing that or what have you? And I'd be like, well, I got to do this. I got to do this. I've got this to do. And if I get done with this in time, then maybe I'll do that, because one of the signs of codependency is being overwhelmed and overextending ourselves, not being able to say no. So we feel like we don't have time for ourselves if you're in that codependency. That's why I say there's freedom when we unlearn those behaviors and we get to know ourselves. My glove. In times past, I've wondered if I was being too picky. Now I'm sure I'm not being too picky and all that type of stuff. That's right. That's right. Because we end up in codependent relationships, or I did, because really what I wanted was to be accepted. But if anybody accepted me, then I was just like, oh, they accept me. And then I'm just like off to the races. Nate, if you look in the description, it has my email address in there, stacyrainick@gmail.com. So if you email me, you can reach me. Thank you. Gromit, did the queen hide her heart? Did she? I don't know, Gromit. I'm not talking about the queen this evening. We're talking about codependency. Maybe you can learn if the queen was codependent. Rayer. Well, I'm not a grandma, but hello. John, have you read Codependent No More? I have. In fact, I did. I have. I read that, and then I worked the steps out of this Codependence Guide to the 12 Steps. And then now I work with people who have codependency, traits. Thank you, Rayer. John, have you? Yeah. Yes, I did read Codependent No More. And it's interesting, because codependency really wasn't, people didn't talk about it until like 70s, 80s. But when Betty Ford came out, with the alcohol and addiction. So they used to mandate those books, Codependent No More, and all the codependent books in the Betty Ford Clinic, Hazelden Clinic, for codependency, because there's addiction, alcoholism, then codependency, then grief underneath that, according to Melody Beattie and Dr. Drew. Okay. Thanks, my glove. It is called Codependence Guide to the 12 Steps, and it's by Melody Beattie. Yeah. And it's very interesting to be able to go through and check it. Nate. Y'all are funny. All right. So, John, I never did the workbook, read the book over a decade ago. I know. The thing is about codependency, it's just as subtle as, like addiction or anything like that. They say addiction's cunning, baffling, and powerful, because addiction isn't just drugs, alcohol. Addiction can be food, it can be shopping, it can be social media, it can be games, it can be chaos, it can be love. There's all kinds of addictions. If you've got problems in your life, of any kind of problem, you don't need that book. You just need it. Okay, well, if that works for you, Soho, that's good. That's good. Some of us need other books. So thank you, though, for being here. All right, so mirror work, rewiring your identity. And so when I worked on my codependency, I did work on love addiction, because really everybody wants love, but not everybody knows what love is and the responsibility of love, and it's not sacrifice, but love is being accountable to yourself and being honest with yourself and someone else, that loyalty, like it was talking about. So mirror work, rewiring your identity. You learn how to see yourself in a mirror. I work with people who do have food addiction. And with food addiction, a lot of times there's this body dysmorphia, but it's not just food addiction. There's a lot of people who look in the mirror. You're in recovery. All right. Congratulations, Erica. Is it Erica? Eric Cantona. Congratulations, you're stuck on step 4. Step 4 is a freedom step. Step 4 through 9, we really get to know ourselves, because a lot of the times, Eric, is that the things that are coping, we use, you're in, recovery. It doesn't say which recovery, but we use things outside of ourselves to cope because we just simply didn't know how to cope with these things. Not all of us had these role models that we learned how to cope very well. Sometimes we come from very dysfunctional homes. And so we didn't learn to cope. And so that 4th step, gets us in touch with some of the reasons that we ran away from the coping, right? Is that, um, I'm trying to, Eric, California. All right. It's good. I'm glad you're here, Eric. So the 4th step, I wish you well. I hope you get through it, and don't, you just keep at it. Just keep at it, and, keep it simple. Like they say, keep it simple, because I've done several 4 steps. Several 4 steps. Okay, good. Thank you, Nate. I've done several 4 steps because, first off, I thought if I just could get sober, then everything was, I'm going to know stuff I didn't even know. I was going to know how to be a good this. I was going to know how to be good at that. I was going to know all of this stuff that I never learned. And I just thought I would know, but I didn't know. And I had to learn, and I had to not feel stupid, because I was emotionally immature, and so I would feel stupid sometimes having to learn all this stuff at, older. Oh no, Robbie. Well, my email's in my email's in the description. Right here. What is codependent? Codependent is relying on, being able to. I can tell you what codependent. It's like looking for validation through other people. It's about people pleasing. It's about, you know, Eric, in 8 months of not using, my life has burst into color. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so happy for you and proud of you, Eric. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad. And just keep at it, because I've been at it a while now, and I've worked this. The steps are the answer to everything. It really, I grew up in a life with, I didn't have structure. And so the steps really provided some structure for me. Yes, you're right, Ray. People pleasing is not good. But a lot of times people don't realize they're people pleasing. They're looking for approval seeking, sometimes, and we have to learn to approve of ourselves. But y'all are funny. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you who sub and choose to spend your time here. So if you haven't subbed, if you find this information valuable, then please feel free to sub, because I like that you're here and you're feeding this algorithm, because you could be looking at, like in this addiction, some people doom scrolling and stuff, and y'all are here. You're not doom scrolling. So thank you for being here. All right. Well, thank you, Jason. Oh my goodness, Nate. All right. All right. So we're talking about codependency. All right. Learning to see yourself in the mirror. Sometimes people don't see themselves. When I was in my codependency, I didn't, you take Vivitrol and now you don't drink. I don't know what that is. I haven't used anything in 28 years. So I don't even know anymore. So you learn how to see yourself in the mirror, to see ourselves in the mirror and not hate and self-loathe ourselves, because that's part of that learning how to not self-loathe ourselves when we're in recovery is, no, I'm not dealing with that. All right. Oh, it's a once a month injection. Wow. Well, I'm glad if it's working that you're not, using to something, John. I think the folks that take you seriously will learn something, and those that don't may accidentally learn something. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think so too. Ow, I hit my toenail. Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, right. Sometimes people do say disrespectful things, but they don't get to have my power. So here we go. So, when we start doing the mirror exercises, like a lot of my people I have, that I work with, I have them put on the mirror, I am good enough. I am good enough. I am good enough. So that they realize and ingrain and embed that and imprint that in them. Because somewhere along the way, maybe they didn't think that they were. And certainly if we get into addiction, how long does it take to constantly stop detecting for threats after 20 years on edge? Breathing, darling. Eric, stay with us. And at the end, we're going to breathe because that's like what it is your central nervous system. And when we're in any kind of world, I don't know if you had drugs, but we're always on the go. But we started that maybe as children, because sometimes what happens as children is that we could be playing as a kid and just sitting there playing, and then all hell breaks loose. And then when all hell breaks loose, kids learn to shrink. That's how we learned to shrink in the beginning, was going, we just don't want to get in trouble, right? We just don't want to get hurt. We just don't want to get in trouble. We just don't want, and so we start running in our central nervous system, calibrating towards, I just don't want this to happen. I just don't want this to happen. So we don't even know what we do want. That's the thing. So you're on a journey. You're on an adventure, and it's the best adventure, Eric, you're ever going to take, is that adventure to get to know yourself, because that's what it's done for me. And a lot of people in recovery like love that I say it's an adventure, because it is an adventure, because I get to learn what I am thinking and what I do feel. Because when I was using, I didn't know what I felt. And even when I quit using for the first 5 years, I still didn't know what I thought or how I felt, because I was married and I had 2 kids, and I didn't really have time to think about what I thought and how I felt. So when I'm in therapy, after 5 years clean and sober, she's like, Stacy, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. And then she's like, what do you feel? I'm like, I don't know, I'm numb. And she's like, you need to go to CODA. So I tried not to go to CODA. I really did not want to go to CODA. But I would go to therapy the next time, and she would say, Stacy, did you go to CODA? And I'd be like, well, no, I went down the hall to Al Anon. And she'd be like, I said to go to CODA. You need to go to CODA. So then the next week would come. She'd be like, Stacy, did you go to CODA? And I was like, no. And she'd be like, you need to go to CODA. So I went to CODA, and I did. I worked these 12 steps. I got a sponsor in CODA, and I worked these 12 steps. And I had to learn that even though I had been sober for 5 years, I still would be making up these stories like what you're talking about, Eric, catastrophizing. Do you feel like that's why you're feeling like you live on edge? Is that catastrophizing? Because I did. And then I had to learn to do the breathing so I didn't feel like I was anxious and catastrophizing. Because what that meant was that in my codependency, I had learned as a child how to anticipate, how to strategize, because that's where we come up with the other shoe falling. Maybe the other shoe really did fall when you were a child, but it's not falling right now. But our body is trained to react and to be prepared for when it does, because we think that that's our reality. And I thought it was my reality. And I know some of you have heard me say that my therapist was like, Stacy, can't you imagine good things happening? Because I would be like, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? That strategizing. And she'd be like, can't you? And I'd be like, I don't have an imagination. She's like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because I didn't realize that what I thought was my life, the catastrophizing and strategizing and the way that I learned to live, I thought that that was my life. But I learned that I could change my reality. And that's why I get on here, to help others learn to change their realities. My power is my smile. Thank you, Rayer. Oh, Nate, I'm just here trying to marry you. Mel Taylor is cool. I don't know who's Mel Taylor, my glove. No marriage on Fridays. Rodolfo. People need to learn the art of self love. Prayer. Oh, okay. Well, I thought you were going to say something profound, Rodolfo, but that's not very profound. Okay. John. Thank you, John. I like myself. I love myself. I respect myself. And those are good too. Absolutely. Great mirror exercises. Yes. Because the eyes really are the window to the soul, but they're part of our perceptions. And our perceived notions, our perceived catastrophizing is we're always watching, reading a room in codependency too, trying to read the room. Where do I fit in? What's going to happen? Am I going to be accepted? And not even able to enjoy our time spent with somebody because we're trying to figure things out or control something. And we don't think we're controlling. We think other people are controlling, but codependents are controlling too. Ty, you're fine. I don't need help. You're happy. Okay, good. Pit keepers. We are spirits trapped within a living prison that we call our body. Well, our bodies are really divine. They're divinely orchestrated. I love waking up in the morning. I'm very happy in the morning when I get up, and I'm thankful that I can move my body. Okay. Robbie, why do so many dudes get on here thinking it's a dating app? I don't know, Robbie. We know I'm not on here to date. Ma'am, I would give my life. Okay. Nate. Okay. Thank you. All right. Pit Keeper. Pit Keeper, John, Robbie. Thank y'all. And Jim John. Sober is hard, but it's not impossible. I've been sober a long time now in Canton. Canton. I've been sober a long time now, and it's a new way of life. I don't know. A lot of times I didn't grow up with people that were sober. I didn't. I don't know if you all did. And the trauma. Yeah. You did so much therapy, Jim. Yeah, because it is. It can be, if you grow up in it, like I grew up in addiction and alcoholism. And so this is what I saw. So this was a learned behavior for me, not only learned, but probably genetic also, because alcohol, addiction, alcohol, it's a disease, but so is obesity. And so that kind of goes together is that, I've said that, sometimes it starts with food addiction, then goes to drug addiction, and then it goes to love addiction, codependency, all of these, the transference of addiction. But it's fun. It's an adventure once we get used to it, but it's scary at first to get to know ourselves. It's scarier to get to know ourselves than try to perform for everybody else at first. But the freedom is getting to know ourselves. Jim Jones, it's not easy. Thank you. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Ty Hughes. Okay. Eric, I'm constantly hyper vigilant in work. I'm on with good friends. I think it's a survival tactic. Yeah, it is a survival tactic, Eric, because what the thing is that on this fourth step, what you can realize is what your survival mechanisms cause because you're making a list of your fears. Why do we create survival mechanisms? It's because of those fears. And so when we're able to look at these fears and see, okay, this is what the fear is. And then everything's in a process. So once you get to name all the fears and everything, and then you get to see how you behave when you get into fearful mode. That's your survival mechanisms. And it all goes into where your shortcomings come in. When this happens, this is what I do. And that's where my shortcoming comes in, when you get to those steps. And then we learn what our shortcoming comes in to do the opposite of what we would normally do. That's what I learned. Do the opposite on the seventh step. Because the seventh step talks about once it's all a process. So do this you're going to find out where your fears came from, the survival mechanisms, because we get to turn those survival mechanisms into tangible tools. Tangible tools. Because we learned a lot. You learned a lot. And so it's just letting the fear go so you can allow the tangible tools to come in. I totally get it. I was like that too. Big guy. It's funny how no matter what you do to kids, they're damaged. If you ever check them, then they can be a-holes with no self-reflection. If you did too much, yeah, we all have our own journey. That's why we're talking about autonomy tonight, because kids, whether, you do your best, you try the hardest to be a good parent. I know I did too. But sometimes I try to heal my kids from my own wounds, and they resent that because that's not their wounds, because sometimes I saw that. But I did learn to catch myself. I did work on my codependency, and I'm very grateful I worked on my codependency. I have a daughter. Sometimes she likes me, sometimes she doesn't. She's 31 years old. That's her right. She is not obligated to me at all. This is the thing, is that understanding that this girl is not obligated to like me. She does not have to like me. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. And I think if we're honest with our kids, my kids used to, I had two kids. I've lost my son. But when my kids used to say, you like this one better, you like that one better, I would be like, I like the one who's behaving the best better, the one who's being nice. But, that goes back again to this codependency. We learn how to be nice to be accepted. And so we didn't know any better. We're not going to be perfect parents. I didn't, I did what I needed to do as a parent. And, if that's why they say, wait till you have your own kids, because parenting is hard. That's some hard stuff to do. So that's why they say, wait till you have your own kids. I was codependent and enmeshed with my mother because my mom was abandoned as a child. So she vowed to herself she's never going to do that to me. Is it a pain in my ass sometimes that she was codependent and enmeshed with me? Am I having to do my own healing work behind it? Yes, but she wasn't a bad mom. Not a bad mom. I wasn't one of the kids that they would, you would leave in the morning time, go out in the streets and come back. My mom had to check in every 2 hours. And then I did that with my kids. And my kids didn't like it because times evolve, you know. But I wanted to know my kids were okay. They didn't have that. I didn't have that kind of freedom. They didn't have that kind of freedom. And we're all going to heal and want our autonomy from our parents. That's normal. That's normal to want to be our own people. And that's our job, to be our own people. A lot of times people will be mad because, it'd be nice sometimes if our parents didn't get these guidebooks, that we didn't just get self-esteem from our parents. And some of us are mad that we didn't get self-esteem from our parents, right? So we didn't get the self-esteem. We have to learn to get self-esteem, though, because self-esteem isn't just a one and done. Every time we accomplish something new, it's like, oh, I can do this now. And it doesn't mean we're dissatisfied with the world or anything else. That's what self-esteem is. It reminds you that you can do something else. So they're going to get mad, but it's okay. They're just needing their own autonomy. My daughter told me, we were walking one day, and she's like, and when my kids were little, I'd give them a bath. I'd massage, get the Johnson's baby oil out, and not oil, but the lotion, and I would give them little massages, because their little bones were growing and stuff. And then my daughter told me, she's like, now I have to wear lotion all the time because you put lotion on me when I was a baby. And it's like, okay, all right then. Whatever. So thank you. Thank you, Funsky. Jim Johns, imagine loving yourself. Exactly. I had to learn to love myself, you know. Yeah. Oh, well, that's pretty interesting. Geez, jaded, wasted. Hey, thank you. We're talking about codependency this evening. Geez, jaded, wasted. Jim Johns, I'm not better than anyone. No, I know that's the thing. That's what we learn in recovery is that, sometimes when in recovery and codependency is that sometimes we either put people way up here or way down here with these extremes, right? And I had to learn what arrogance and humility was because and that's why I love sharing about codependency. A lot of people just don't know what it is. Just like I used to think arrogance meant snobby, and then somebody called me out one time because I was a struggling single mom, and I was like 7 years clean and sober, 8. And then this lady asked me, and this isn't a religious channel, by the way. It's not a religious channel. It's not a political channel. It's not, we don't ask my age, but it's a spiritual. We do talk about spirituality some. And so somebody asked me, Stacey, how's your relationship with God? And I'm like, my relationship with God is just fine. And then she says to me, oh, Stacey, that's arrogant. And I'm thinking, what the hell? Because I was telling her my woes with my problems. I was telling her my problems. And that's when she asked me that. And then I had to come, of course, when people make you mad, you really just sit there and ponder on it and think about it. And then I started thinking, okay, what she's trying to tell me is if my relationship with God was so great, I wouldn't be struggling like I was. And so I learned that there's arrogance in this electromagnetic universe. There's arrogance over here and humility over here. And in between, it's harmony. Humility is a virtue. So humility keeps me teachable and reachable, right? And like what Jim Jones says, I'm no better than anyone else, but I'm no less than anyone else. I'm not on this thing to where somebody's up higher than me or somebody's lower than me. I don't have to esteem myself that way. Now, I used to esteem myself that way when I was a young person. People had to have more problems than me so I could be at the head of the pack, right? So I used to be like that, but I had to learn that I couldn't esteem myself from other people. See, esteem is something that I do, it's not what other people do. It's been 3 years, my wife and I haven't gotten intimate. What to do? I'm frustrated. You probably need a coach or a therapist, Tom. I'm working with couples on intimacy. If you look in the description box, my email's in there. It's not going to just get better until you are able both to talk about it, I understand. Rodolfo, Jim Johns. Jim Johns. I'm willing to date. Yeah. I'm willing to date, but I live in this really small town and the options just aren't, there's not a lot of options. I have all the answers. I still go back. Uh, okay. Robbie, a sober really is a beautiful place for anyway. I lived in the ugly world. Yes. Angela, hello, darling. It's good to see you. All right. The cult of victimhood, that not being in this is Rodolfo, the cult of victimhood, that not being in the victim mentality is powerful. It is powerful. Now, I talk about that a lot, about not being the victim and villain and discernment and judgment, because judgment calls for us to think that we're guilty or somebody else is guilty, right? Because that's judgment. And I just talked last week, Rodolfo, about defensiveness. And a lot of people run around, and I'm sure Eric may do this. I used to do this, run around defensive because I felt guilty about a lot. Thank you, Eric. You're going okay. You have a good night. But I felt guilty a lot. And so, but to learn discernment is not the victim and villainhood, but we do need to heal that. Where did I feel like a victim? And that's like in recovery, that's what the fourth step starts is, where did I feel like a victim? And then what did I do when I felt like a victim? What did I learn? That's where our survival skills come up, is when we feel like a victim, because we're trying not to be hurt. And so we spend so much energy in our life trying not to be hurt that we can't focus on peace and freedom. And so when we can heal what we feel it took away our peace and freedom, heal that on our soul, the power that we let that have over our life. We don't necessarily, we talk about forgiveness. It's not really so much about forgiving the person. Forgiveness is for you to forgive the power that this event had over your life, in the victim. Because the thing is until we heal that pain, it seems like it still keeps showing back up in another form or another character or another scenario, right? Eric, yes. I'm glad Eric was here tonight. Why do you think the young generation don't have kids till they're in their mid 30s nowadays? Well, I think that they've seen, I don't know. I know for me, my daughter, she come from a broken home and struggling single mom, and she didn't want to see that or be that. I had kids later than my mom had kids. I don't know. I think they just realize they have a lot of life to live before they have kids, and they don't want to inflict kids with the pain that they had, maybe. But I don't really know why they don't. My daughter sometimes tells me, she's 31, and she'll tell me, Mom, I don't know if you're going to be a grandma. Now, my son probably would have made me a grandma if he would have lived, because he was a little wild. But my daughter, she says, I don't know if you're going to be a grandma. And I'm like, okay. Because I'm not, I, it's her responsibility. So she needs to be happy. All right. I'm only going to be addressing things that I'm talking about in this live tonight. So I want to thank you all for being here. And if I don't get to your comment, it's because it's something that I'm not talking about tonight. So, all right. Okay. Five Elements. Hello. How are you? It's good to see you. Robert, you should. Daniel. Okay. Angela, how did you stop being enmeshed with your mother, Stacy? Well, I had to set boundaries. And it wasn't like you can tell your mom you're setting boundaries, is that I had to, have the boundaries with myself and be like, okay, I'm going to talk to my mom once a week, you know, that I didn't need to talk to her every day. She would love that, but I don't need to do that because we have people have their lives. And so I understand compassionately where my mom comes from because she was abandoned and she didn't want me to feel abandoned. So again, like I was saying earlier, sometimes our kids are mad at us for trying to heal us from our pain, trying to heal them from our pain. That's what I'm trying to say. Trying to heal them from our pain. And so that would be like, so you just have to set boundaries with yourself. My mom's in Texas and I'm down here near Mexico, and I love her dearly, but I'm working. I have to do my things. I can't be all focused in her business. I can't be rescuing people. My mother, liked to rescue people. Feeling happy to see you. Oh, good. Thank you, Five Elements. Is that helping any, Angela? Codependent mothers are very possessive. They are. My mother has narcissistic and codependent behaviors. I understand you. Yes, girl. Yes, because I had to learn, when sometimes they make it all about them, right? And so you have to set those boundaries with yourself. And it can be very painful and frustrating, is that I can't take care of my mom when I'm trying to take care of myself. And so having that boundary, just not letting it get to me. So then I don't get angry at her and I don't get angry at me. But sometimes I still get triggered, from the codependency because I know that that's I know what she wants and I'm not willing to. Oh, you're very welcome. But I can't always do that. I can't go off into this land. I have to stay in Stacy land. So, because I have responsibilities. And so, love doesn't mean, that we are allowing ourselves to sacrifice our own lives and our own things for somebody else. Doesn't mean enmeshment. And, she didn't know what enmeshment was, my mother. She didn't know that that's what it was. So she got married awful young. She was just a kid herself. I wish I had super chat option near Mile. I hope y'all will keep watching because I've got the viewers now, but they've made it really hard. I don't have the watch time. So thank you for saying something about that near Mile. No, we are not responsible for our mothers. We are not. And you're right. So if you can start setting that boundary, like I'm going to talk to her once a week. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to tell them we're setting boundaries because are they going to act right? Are they mature enough to accept if you tell them you're setting a boundary, they might be okay with it, but if your mom's narcissistic, she's probably going to be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Da 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 da, and make it all about her, right? So you just have to only normal. I didn't see the other thing you asked me. I apologize. Yeah, I didn't see the other one. Super chat option. Let me go back up here. Midlife problems, getting 30. Need advice. What are the midlife problems, Normal? So we're talking about codependency tonight. Is it related to codependency? Because some of y'all need to email me with some of the problems. And if you need a coach or something, because there's so many on here that I don't I don't feel like I can get everybody's problem. So I'll start with like codependency. So when we're codependent, we're not fully living our own life. Like Angela and I were talking about, you're not fully living your own life. You're having to live your life for somebody else, and you don't feel whole. WHOLE, whole, when we're living that way, and we feel overextended because it's not our life. Codependents are people pleasers for sure. Yes, yes. And when we look at why, well, because I don't want to be rejected. And so we have to learn how to accept ourselves to be accepted. That's what I learned is, most people accept me because I accept myself. But when I was afraid of being rejected, I noticed I got more rejected more because it's the energy living in this electromagnetic quantum field of everything. And so the quantum field part is us knowing what do I want so that we can navigate toward that way. And the electromagnetic field is, guiding our steps and everything, and knowing that not to be in judgment because what's bad was bad until it's not, and what's good is good until it's not. And everything's ever evolving and changing. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you. So, in taking a whole look at the codependency, is that it isn't about becoming someone new because you were born whole. You were born worthy. You were born valuable. When we were born, we weren't asking questions about who we are and what we deserve and where we belong in this world. We just come out and it's like, I can't tell y'all enough how I love those reels where they're like, hey, if adults, were making friends like kids do and be like, hey, you want to see how fast I can run? Because as adults, we forget to be ourselves because we've had to twist into everything. Rodolfo, don't be mean to people on here, please. All right. So, in one part of this, thank you, Angela. I appreciate that. So, in wrapping this codependency series up, is over the last few talks, we explored codependency not as a flaw, not as a diagnosis to wear like an identity, because it's a learned behavior. So that's the good news is we can unlearn it, and not as something to shame ourselves for, because you did these survival mechanisms gives you these tangible tools, because the thing is that and when people pleasing, what we got to learn is that we are capable of so many things. We will do so many things for other people. And then we walk away thinking, or if you're like me, you walk away thinking, if I would have done these things for myself, how powerful I would be. Well, you're never too old and it's never too late to do those things, to be yourself. So thank you for apologizing, Rodolfo. So, you know, returning to yourself because you were born worthy and valuable. So you're not a flaw. You don't need a diagnosis to wear like an identity, and it's something to shame yourself for. It's learned way of surviving. That's all. And we can learn a different way. A lot of people don't think they're codependent because they don't see themselves as dependent. Because see, we're usually, don't know about y'all, but I titled myself, I'm independent. But I kept sinking in this codependency till I could realize I was codependent. I kept sinking more and feeling less independent as I kept feeling my power slipping away. Thank you, Robbie. I appreciate that. All right. So Rodolfo enjoy that Diet Coke. So a lot of people see themselves as independent, capable, and strong, the one who does the hardest things and the one who helps and fixes and shows up. And you do that. So you are capable, you are competent, and you can do those things. It's just knowing that you can do that for yourself. There's no shame in doing these things for yourself because then you'll see that you're going to start being attracted to and attracting different in this electromagnetic field. My mother never allowed, I know, right? Never allowed me to express anger or other feelings. That's why I don't talk to her anymore. Codependents are controlling, right? And it is more of that narcissism too, is that they want this world to look a certain way and you have to fall into that narrative. and so that's very hard. It doesn't allow you to be your authentic self. That your wants, there's a lot of times when you ask, for me, like being codependent, is that when you ask me what I wanted, I didn't know because my wants weren't really addressed that much. And how did I feel? A lot of us don't know how we feel because if you're in a narcissistic thing, they don't care how you feel. They're not empathetic. So they don't really care how you feel. I can say my mom did care how I felt, a lot of the times, but sometimes it didn't land well. Codependency doesn't always look like needing people. Sometimes it looks like needing people to be okay with you so you can feel okay with yourself. No, no, they don't. They don't allow themselves to be themselves either, though. Yeah, they don't. Because they're too busy trying to see where they fit in. Hey, five elements. So sometimes it looks like needing people to be okay with you so you can feel okay with yourself. That's what that approval seeking, right? And so it's that, and if they don't get approval, you probably can't be their friend. I know. Okay. So it looks so this usually begins before we realize it. This is a subtle training behavior when you're with a codependent or narcissist, and we get fragmented. If your mom's a narcissist, we get fragmented, and I got fragmented because we never knew when all hell was going to break loose. My dad was an addict, my mom was codependent, and so when want to make people happy, but they give to get, very manipulative. Yes, they don't realize they're manipulative. We don't, and when I worked on this, I didn't realize that people pleasing is a manipulation because you're not showing people who you truly are when you're people pleasing. But it's a manipulation. And they don't know how to ask for what they want. That's why they're manipulating. Because I had to learn to use my big girl words and ask for what I wanted, what I needed, rather than trying to hint and, to manipulate. So guilt, and some of this guilt, like I say, it's learned as a child, and we think that we are guilty, and it may be unearned guilt, you know. So somewhere along the line, many people learned it's not safe to fully be myself. It's not safe to feel what I feel, and it's not safe to need what I need. That's why it's hard to say, ask for what we want or need. So instead, it became safer to match the environment, like you said, the manipulation, to match the environment, to read the room, to adjust, to become what was needed, that chameleon. And any addictions, people become chameleons too. They do over apologize. And that's one of the things I love too about the 12 steps in the groups is that we learn to make the amends. And when we learn to make an amends, we learn that we're not just saying, I'm sorry, because a lot of times people say, I'm sorry, whether addictive, codependent, and these kind of behaviors, is they just learn to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But the thing is we keep repeating the behavior if we don't know what we're sorry for. Sometimes people just learned to say that I'm sorry just to get people off their back. And so, you know, I have to say, I'm sorry for my behavior. I apologize for the way that I behaved, or I regret the way that I behaved, and I'm trying to do better, and then say what it is that you did so that you take ownership of what we do. So that the adaptation was intelligent. It was also survival. At the root of codependency is often fear, control, lack of trust. And underneath that, there's pain, there's anger, loneliness, emptiness, and unmet needs. So many people learned that love and connection were uncertain. So that's why they molded themselves to be what somebody wanted them to be and lost themselves while doing that. And maybe love was conditional, that you had to be good to be loved. And so people are just trying too hard to be good, and they don't even realize the goodness because they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for somebody else. And maybe roles were assigned in the family. I was a firstborn, so I was a protector. So maybe you became responsible for adults emotionally. Again, I was the firstborn and I was the protector. It's like maybe you learned to self-sacrifice. Maybe you learned self-sacrifice through religion or cultural conditioning. Because a lot of times, people think they're afraid that if they're not charitable to somebody else, that they can't serve themselves too. But we can also are taught you can't give from an empty cup. So this is the paradoxes that we deal with in life. They do think they're responsible for other people's feelings. We have to learn. Mm-mm. And so that's why, it's a lot of pressure. That's why I say there's so much freedom to not being codependent, to learning not to be codependent. There's freedom. And then when we show up, people know you're showing up because you want to show up. Because as long as we're in our codependency, like when I'm working with people that have had codependency, they don't really think that when people do show up for them, that the people really want to show up for them. They wonder, why are they showing up for me? Why are they doing this? When they've put everything out there, they've done all this people pleasing and seeking approval from all these people. So when they get it, they don't even accept it because they haven't accepted themselves. So it makes it really hard to win with the codependent, right? And that same goes with a narcissist. The narcissist and the codependents have a lot of the similar traits there together. But the narcissist is never going to take a look at it because theirs is just too painful to look at, apparently. I don't know. But maybe media reinforced the belief that being chosen, liked, attractive, or validated was a measure of your worth. It's the media, right? They don't trust anybody. It's hard. We have to learn to trust ourselves. Pit Keeper 666. Well, hopefully you'll get something out of this. It's okay. All right. Well, okay. You sound a little controlling. I'm just saying. So the pattern became normalized. You didn't question it because it was all you knew. We're staying on topic. So whatever reinforced it, whether it was media or religion or whatever, whether it was media or religion or your home upbringing. But now that we're older, we get to have the control. We get to choose what we want and being aware of our choices because we have a ganglia chains down our back, the autonomic and the cerebrospinal system, and in our programming, autonomic is automatics. That's why people will sometimes apologize over and over for something. It's because it's automatic. It's just an automatic thing. So that's like the autonomic. That's a reaction, just a response. It's mostly to keep the peace. I'm sorry means please don't be mad. A narcissist is sabotaging this chat. I know. I got you, Angela. It's okay. Hold on. All right. I put them out because, I try to ignore them because they're trying to get attention, but I don't like them distracting y'all, so. The pattern became normalized. We didn't question it. It was just a pattern. So we can change it. And then when I mentioned the ganglia chains and all is because our neural pathways learn to adapt. So when we're triggered by what we see, touch, taste, smell, and hear, then that sends a signal to us. Ah, thank you, M. Dartha Jwade. Jwade. Okay. Thank you. I do like to talk about these things. Codependence, avoid conflict. A conflict and confrontation. Yes. I had to learn how to do that because, setting boundaries look like to me growing up. I think you were here the other night when I was talking about peeling out of tires, cuss words, and, violence was what I thought. And that's why people like to avoid conflict and confrontation, or they never saw a conflict and confrontation. Some of my clients, they never saw their parents argue. They never saw any of this. And then the parents get divorced and they're like, so then that's a fear. Why did that? We try to make sense out of things we don't understand. That's where our imagination comes in. but we didn't get to have the childlike imagination, and I do have the childlike imagination now, but I had to heal a lot of that stuff, get a lot of that stuff off of my soul so that I could have my childlike imagination back, but that where I didn't feel like I had to strategize. And in a few minutes, we'll do the breathing because that helped a great deal. But getting to know myself without having to identify with somebody else was a real gift and an adventure, and it's still an adventure. So I get to, sometimes I'll think things and I get to think, oh, isn't that interesting? I think that I don't have to stay stuck in this spiral, though, right? I get to control my mind now instead of having my mind control me. So the pattern became normalized. We didn't question it because it was all that we knew at one time. And that's how codependency begins showing up. It's subtle and it's cunning and it's baffling, just like other things. It just, before you know it, it's easy to get sucked into codependency stuff. So we'll feel, just like you said, we'll feel responsible for other people's emotions. You struggle to say no without guilt. You overgive, overhelp, and overfunction. You anticipate needs before they're spoken. You feel deeply uncomfortable when someone is upset with you. You over-explain yourself. You rescue, you fix and manage. You lose touch with your own feelings and needs. I didn't put him in timeout, Robbie. No worries. I put him in timeout. So we will shape shift depending on who we're with. Hello, Melvin Myers from Tulsa. Are you in Oklahoma? I have done with my dinner. It's like 8:21 where I am. I eat dinner early here, 5 elements. And we do all of that not because we're weak. Codependent people do all not because they're weak, but not because something's wrong with them, but because they needed to. That's how they learned to maintain connection. That was a learned behavior, learn to maintain connection by abandoning themselves. So this is what codependency actually is: not love, not kindness, and not empathy. We think that it is. I have a lot of people, it's like, are you empathetic or are you codependent? Because a lot of people try to heal themselves by healing somebody else when they haven't done the healing themselves. And then we end up disappointment. That's when we say they're a rescuer, right? So we're rescuing without understanding that we haven't actually rescued ourselves yet. And the other person isn't going to ever be able to rescue us. They might even abandon us. That's the way it worked for me anyway, because I was controlling, right? Codependent, fear of losing connection for sure. Yeah. And people, when talking, I just talked to someone who, is codependent earlier today. And I said, in this attraction and repulsion, sometimes this passive aggressive behavior, because codependent, they carry a lot of passive aggressive. I carried a lot of passive aggressive behavior when I was codependent. And it's a way to try to control. It's a way to try to control. It's being passive aggressive, giving someone the business because we're wanting them to do something without saying our words, right? That's a form of control. So we're trying to control them to take care of us, to baby us, to apologize or to grovel or to feel the guilt. But we don't tell them what's wrong. Nothing. Or that's not using our words. I had to learn to use my words and say, it hurt my feelings when. I am from Texas, Melvin Myers. So, codependency is when your sense of self-worth and emotional stability becomes dependent on what's happening outside of you. When I was a codependent, yes, I would. Well, in the second guessing of myself, because Angela, I would second guess myself. I would think, oh, if you had esteem, you wouldn't be upset about this, because I was very insecure. I was even jealous. Both insecurity and jealous were learned behaviors for me. I wasn't born insecure or jealous. They were learned behaviors for me. And so I had patterned that into my system, my neural pathways to be insecure and jealous. So I would be like, frumpy, frumpy. And sometimes I did have negative emotions, and it would go back and forth because sometimes it would be like, Stacy, if you were more secure, this stuff wouldn't bother you, but it would bother me. And it wouldn't, sometimes it was stuff that should not bother me. It was my mother's pain, and not my own pain. And so I did suppress emotions too, but I needed to get rid of my mom's pain, even though it wasn't my pain. I had to learn how to process it and get rid of it so I didn't let mom's pain control me anymore. Do you relate with that? I bet you do. So I did suppress my negative emotions because in a people please, and that's what we do. Uh, Good, Robbie. I know you care a lot. I think you're doing good with your daughter. I think you are. I thank you, Melvin. So it's when we don't see ourselves clearly in codependency, we don't clearly and comfortably see ourselves through our own eyes. We're too busy trying to see ourselves through other people's eyes, and we don't want to name that. Old tapes, exactly, Elena. Welcome. It's good to see you. So, yeah. So instead of asking, what do I feel? What do I need? What is true for me? A codependent will ask, are they okay with me? Did I upset them? Or what do I need to do to maintain the connection? In our house in the codependency and my mom, it'd be like, who's got the black hat on? Somebody always had to be in trouble or what have you, and it's not really that anybody's always in trouble. Your mother and sister have jealousy problems. They're both codependents. Yep. Jealousy is, I had to learn, I talk about this electromagnetic field and the paradox polarities and all of this. And I learned jealousy. And I did not learn admiration. But admiration and jealousy are on the same thread. And I got to learn admiration when the pain of jealousy, because it's like it didn't feel good to be jealous. And so some of the people that I loved, I would be jealous of, and so that really hurt. And so I was like, what is it that I feel? I just didn't know how to feel admiration. And once I was like, oh, it's admiration, it changed the whole trajectory of that. Rodolfo, we don't talk about my age on here. We don't talk about politics or religion. You can talk about spirituality, but not religion. I don't want to ever become codependent by my mistake trying to take care. Right? You're doing good. You're not taking responsibility. 5 elements, put Rodolfo in timeout. Thanks, 5 elements. All right. So here's where the healing begins. It's not with blame, not with becoming someone new, but with awareness. Awareness is the removal of obstacles. Like tonight is the full moon. Right, right. So we get to learn because we might have learned a behavior or a feeling that wasn't ours, especially when we're codependent and mesh with our mother. We may learn a feeling or behavior that's not even ours, and then when we get to really take a look at it, it's like, oh, I'm not even, this ain't even my problem. This ain't, you know. So the healing begins not with blame, because we can't blame someone else and empower ourselves, right? And not with becoming someone new, but with awareness, just awareness, being that remover of obstacles. Seeing clearly, this is what I learned, this is how I adapted, and this is not who I fundamentally am. This is not who I am. And so codependency fears autonomy. Thanks, Robbie. And so codependency fears autonomy, you being on your own, you having your own mind, your own thoughts, your own feelings, and being able to express them. Codependency fears that, but we can change it. So autonomy says, I can have my own feelings, I can have my own thoughts, I can have my own needs, and I have my own boundaries and still be worthy of connection, right? So that can feel terrifying at first because you built your identity around other people. And coming home to yourself can feel unfamiliar, Krish. Thank you, Krish. All right. But that's the work. Learning to include yourself in your own life. Consider yourself before you say yes. Do I really want to do this? Do I really, Melvin? No, because we don't need a lot of distractions and controversies because not everybody observes the same religion. It's why not religion. And I'm not having religion fights on here. We are all souls. That's the work. Learning to include yourself in your own life. Asking. Oh, thank you, K. Krish. Is it K. Krish? Krish. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? What do I feel? Before we, start trying to navigate and anticipate somebody else's feelings. Like Angela said, being responsible for somebody else's feelings. You're not responsible. I always say set loving boundaries. Boundaries are not mean. Boundaries can be loving. Saying no thank you is the thing. Just say no thank you. You don't have to explain, over explain, anything like that. Just no thank you. If you want to explain, just say, I'm just not going to do that today. Oh no, I don't like doing that. It's okay. Next time. Or sometimes we have to do it next time. Sometimes we have responsibilities and have to say no thank you. So allowing your answers to matter to you. In India, very cool. Well, thank you, Krish from India. It's 5 elements. 5 elements is India too. All right. We're about to be finished here, y'all. Allowing those answers to matter to you, not because you're selfish, but because you're becoming self-connected, being connected with yourself. Then you're not going to be trying to you're not going to feel like you have to cope with so many things. When you get in touch with yourself, you won't have these shoulds on yourself. You won't have as much guilt. You won't have as much shame. I'm a mindset coach, Krish. I'm a mindset coach, life coach. So healing codependency is not about becoming less loving. It's about becoming more honest, getting honest with yourself, more regulated, more clear, more intentionally anchored. You stop looking outside of yourself and for constant permission to exist. You get to be unapologetically you. Okay, bye-bye, wrap. So, bye-bye. Is that what they Saturday Night Live? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You stop looking outside of yourself for constant permission to exist and begin building trust within yourself. This takes practice, small moments, noticing when you abandon yourself, and pausing before you're automatically trying to fix or rescue something. Allowing yourself to say no, feeling discomfort without making it mean danger. I'm not AI. So, learning to sit with yourself in the mirror again and remembering. You may have learned to see yourself through the eyes of others, but you can learn to see yourself clearly. Because what you learned is not who you are. It was a strategy, it was a chapter, a survival pattern, and not your identity. So, Angela, why do some codependents never change like you, Stacy? Well, I think that I think a lot of people think that codependency means that, like when they hear the word, because like when I first heard the word, I just like blew it off. And it's like, but when the pain of staying the same gets great enough, when we get hurt, we get sick and tired, get hurt and everything else, then we can like start thinking about change, like learning that humility, like I said, being teachable, is that knowing if something, learning our own soul, Angela, learning our own soul, because I know now when my soul feels uncomfortable, that I might be compromising myself, or I'm not living to, my maximum when my soul is uncomfortable. And it's not about the other people. Robbie. Thank you, Stacy and Angela. That was a key for me. I'm not responsible for other people. No, no, you are not. Thank you. So, yeah, Salvapan, my girlfriend challenged me. Okay, you want to put that one in timeout too? 5 elements. Anyway, yeah, I don't know that that's on topic tonight. Thank you for those hearts. So anything that was learned can be unlearned. That's the bottom line this evening. You're not here to become what everybody else needs. You're here to become someone you can recognize, someone you recognize, that you look in the mirror and you're not thinking or criticizing yourself and comparing yourself or feeling like you got to perform for somebody else. It's loving yourself. And it's just these small, small things that we do. Like I said, I started working on my codependency, Angela, 22 years ago. My therapist sent me, and I was like, so she kept telling me to go, and I would go to another room, but not there. So anyway, I worked out of this book, The Codependence Guide to the 12 Steps by Melody Beattie. I went to Coda, the group, and at first those people sounded whiny to me. I thought, oh, they're so whiny. But then I started listening, and I started seeing where I could relate with some of the stuff they were saying. And then really working in this book, I got to see where I related. Somebody asked earlier if I had read Codependent No More, and I had, and then this. And so I've worked out of this. Not everybody that I work with is codependent. I don't, like in my coaching, I don't work out of that book. So when people can't afford coaching on codependency, I always suggest to them, just like my therapist suggested to me, go to CODA. Now I do work with people on codependency, and I suggest going to CODA, but I also am able to see when they're in a codependent behavior, you know. And so we talk about different ways that they can behave, or that they can, different things they can say, how to learn to set loving boundaries. So, okay. Well, that's about all we are tonight. That's all we're going to do. We've been over on here an hour and a half, y'all. So, y'all ready to breathe? Breathing helps us to regulate. And, when earlier somebody was here and they were asking, when are they going to stop being so jumpy and stuff like this, and that's that rescuing too, and these behaviors. So being able to breathe, to pause before you say yes. And if you don't know, just a lot of times people say yes because they don't want to feel left out, or they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, but they don't think about it first. So just breathing and thinking about it. You're very welcome, Angela. I always appreciate you being here and love seeing you here. So thank you for your input and everything. Robbie, wish everyone that comes in could be like Angela. She has got some great comments tonight and understanding. Thank you, Robbie. I think so too. Elena's really cool too. I know Elena, and there's a lot of people in here that, have really had some great comments. But I really love Angela and your participation. And, we had some others earlier that, it really does my heart good to see in here. And I'm grateful. And thank you, 5 Elements, for helping with the moderation here. And y'all ready to breathe, darlings? To get regulated and regenerated. Your cells, and working is our self and our cells and our soul are divinely connected and wholly directed. And I mean WHOLLY. Understanding that we are a part of everything, but we are not responsible for everything. We're responsible for this. And that you are important, because I know for me that a lot of the things that drove me was that feeling of not being important enough. But through all the work that I've gotten to do, I've got to learn that I am important. So here we grow. These glasses bother my nose after a while. Let's breathe, darling. So we're going to take that deep breath in. Your shoulders are going to rise. Your heart will open. And we're going to hold it for 4 seconds or whatever's comfortable. And then just release gently and slowly out of the mouth. We're only doing it 5 times. But I just want you to be able to, sometimes we can't even hear ourselves. Sometimes we can't even feel our heartbeat. We get so busy doing things. And so just being yourself. Just, you're a human being. Just be. So let's take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Two more. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe. Hold it. And release. How do y'all feel? Do y'all feel slowed down, regenerated, and regulated? You are very welcome, Robbie. Thank you. Uh, I'm so glad because that makes my evening to know that I did. Rusty, I'm sorry you missed it too. Well, you can join me on Sunday. Sunday I'll be back on here at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, okay? And then I do story time. So we're going to do story time on Sunday, and I'll integrate a story to where we can kind of see, like in the story, how codependency plays out. And then next week, we're going to start talking about the ACEs test. So that will be interesting for you, Robbie, because I don't know if Australia does that ACEs test. So, yeah, I always look forward to seeing you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate you. Much love and appreciation. We're over 1,000 subs now. If you have time and want to catch up on these videos, or like Rusty, if you want to catch this video later, that would be good because I don't have watch time. Watch time is something that I need to get so I could get the super chat or whatever it is. But that's not what I get on here for, so I don't really push that a whole lot, because I get on here so I can just meet with you all and have a good evening, have an amazing Friday night, and we can talk about things. And you all are so very supportive and stuff. You're very welcome, Angela. Very welcome. I'm so glad you were here. All right. Well, I think it's time to go, y'all. Y'all have a good evening or a good day wherever you're from. Namaste to you, Rusty. I hope to see you all Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time for story time. All righty. Y'all have a great weekend. Bye. Okay. All right. Thanks, Robbie. All right.